Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are turning away from the future and looking squarely at the past, but, not just for a history lesson.
Right.
We have this foundational stack of sources that outlines the absolute bedrock of, modern governance, law, engineering, all of it. We are undertaking a deep dive into what you could call the three titanic pillars of human civilization: ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Rome.
Three giants for sure.
You might think, the basics, pyramids, codes, aqueducts, that sort of thing. But our goal here is to quickly extract the core systemic lessons and maybe some surprising achievements, the often invisible ones.
Yeah, the ones that still echo.
Exactly. We want to cut through the information overload and understand why their decisions made millennia ago still shape your commute, your contract, your democracy, even today.
It's a huge task, but crucial.
Okay, let's unpack this. What specific intellectual breakthroughs, what structural innovations allow these three specific cultures to endure and, influence pretty much every society that followed?
It's the perfect mission, really, because these civilizations are more than just historical footnotes, aren't they? They're the intellectual blueprints.
Blueprints, I like that.
Our sources really highlight that they establish the fundamental principles, from organized state power to complex legal frameworks that underpin modern society. To truly understand the modern world, we have to see how these differences played out and why certain innovations just stuck.
Right. So where do we start? It has to be Mesopotamia, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We begin where organization itself really began, Mesopotamia. We're talking about the cradle of civilization, that land nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers.
Modern-day Iraq, parts of Syria, thriving from about, 3500 BCE?
Exactly. And, Mesopotamia earned that title almost by necessity. It was a fiercely competitive environment.
Right. Lots of city-states.
Yeah, divided into independent city-states like Sumer, Akkad, Babylon. Unlike the later unified empires, this political fragmentation actually drove rapid administrative innovation. Well, they had to organize huge populations in these densely packed urban centers. It wasn't optional.
And that necessity, that pressure, led to maybe the single most important administrative invention ever, writing.
Absolutely. Cuneiform. It was the world's first writing system. But the key thing is, it wasn't invented for poetry or religious epics initially.
Right.
It was actually a crucial accounting technology.
Accounting, like keeping the books.
Pretty much. Used for tracking grain yields, measuring property lines, formalizing contracts. It enabled complex economics and administration that, frankly, just couldn't happen otherwise.
The sheer volume of transactions.
Yeah.
They needed a permanent record.
Precisely. And when you have dense populations, complex trade, property records, you need law that's predictable, right? You can't just rely on the ruler's whim of the day.
That makes sense. Which leads us to Hammurabi.
Exactly. That brings us to King Hammurabi's code. Our sources emphasize this as one of the first known written legal codes.
Not just punishments, though.
No, it wasn't just a list of punishments. It was a serious attempt to standardize justice across a diverse territory. The real insight here, I think, is the idea that the law exists independently of the immediate judge or king.
So it's codified, displayed?
Right, and theoretically applies to everyone, though, let's be clear, often unequally. It reflected a clear social hierarchy.
Still, a massive step. The codification of law, the invention of the wheel for transport, pottery, the plow for agriculture, those huge ziggurat temple towers.
Yeah, impressive structures.
Mesopotamia really pioneered urban living, didn't it? But also the administrative tools needed to manage it all. They basically established the rules of the game.
They absolutely did. But their reliance on that fragmented city-state model, it meant they were constantly vulnerable. Internal conflicts, external threats.
So their strength was also a weakness.
In a way, yes. Their innovations were brilliant, but their political structure maybe lacked the kind of defensive durability we see next.
Okay. Which brings us neatly to a society defined by that very durability. And, wow. Stunning centralized power, ancient Egypt, stretching along the Nile.
The contrast is immediate, isn't it? While Mesopotamia was fragmented, dynamic, maybe a bit chaotic.
Egypt was all about stability.
Stability and incredible longevity, lasting over 3 millennia, right up until Alexander the Great in 332 BCE. This unparalleled persistence, well, that was the gift of the Nile.
The predictable flooding.
Exactly. Its predictable annual flooding allowed for surplus agriculture, which in turn supported a unified, centralized, and immensely powerful state.
And their political structure perfectly reflected that control, right? The pharaohs. They weren't just kings.
No, they were considered divine. And that wasn't just, good PR. It meant religious and political authority were completely intertwined.
So less internal dissent.
It certainly minimized the kind of internal dissent that often plagued Mesopotamia. You couldn't really challenge the state without challenging the entire cosmos.
Wow. And the physical manifestation of that power is what still just captivates us today.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about the pyramids of Giza, the Sphinx, those incredible temples at Luxor and Karnak. These structures were built for eternity.
They weren't just architecture, were they? They were like massive labor management projects.
Exactly. They reinforced the pharaoh's total control over the entire nation's resources and population, monumental undertakings.
And their commitment to the afterlife, centered around gods like Ra, Osiris, Isis, that drove not just the building, but also their scientific development.
Yes, and that's often overlooked, I think. The whole pursuit of embalming and mummification, well, it drove their advanced knowledge in medicine, surgery, anatomy, yeah. And their need to realign property markers after the annual Nile floods that refined their geometry and mathematics.
Practical necessity again.
And observing the heavens to predict the Nile's behavior led to pretty sophisticated astronomy. They were organized scientifically, not just spiritually.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If Mesopotamia gave us the written tools to manage society, the accounting, the law, Egypt gave us the organizational model. They showed that a vast, centralized bureaucracy, if managed correctly, could create an incredibly enduring civilization.
Right.
And deploy labor on a scale that was just, well, previously unimaginable.
It was a proof of concept, almost.
Yeah, a proof of concept for the centralized nation state.
That centralized power, that concept of organizing resources for these massive multi-generational projects.
Yeah.
That's the key Egyptian legacy that sort of filtered down through time. But that concept reached its ultimate, most expansive form with Rome.
Right. Okay, so we jump forward chronologically now to ancient Rome. Started later, around 753 BCE.
Yeah.
But unlike the geographically constrained civilizations we just discussed, Rome aimed for something bigger, true continental domination.
The sheer scale of the Roman endeavor is just astounding. They started as a city on the Italian peninsula, right? But the empire they built, it stretched across the Mediterranean, North Africa, much of Europe.
And lasted so long.
Their influence through the Western Empire's fall in 476 CE, and then the Eastern Byzantine continuation until 1453 CE. That's the longest-running political project in Western history, arguably.
And their system of governance had to keep adapting to that immense scale. They didn't start as an autocracy, did they?
No, not at all. They began as a republic, elected officials, checks, balances, that sort of thing. But managing a territory that large with a distributed government eventually became, well, almost impossible.
Leading to the shift
to a powerful empire ruled by emperors. That political evolution, though, from decentralized republic to centralized empire, it really demonstrates their pragmatism.
How so? Pragmatism.
Well, they seemed less concerned with divine mandates like the pharaohs and much more concerned with utility, efficiency. Just look at their engineering.
The roads, the aqueduct.
Exactly. The massive network of roads connecting the empire, the monumental aqueducts feeding water into dense cities like Rome itself, structures like the Colosseum.
These weren't primarily built for worshiping the afterlife like the pyramids, were they? They seem much more present-focused.
Absolutely. Built for living and governing in the here and now. The roads weren't for sightseeing, they were supply lines for the army.
And tax collection, I bet.
And tax collection, yeah.
Yes.
Allowing rapid integration of conquered territories. The aqueduct supported urban density, which was crucial for their political and economic hubs. Rome perfected the architecture of utility. What's fascinating here is how they used the law to manage this vast, incredibly diverse dominion.
Roman law. Still influential today.
Hugely. Roman law, often drawing on earlier Mesopotamian principles, sure, but systematized to an extreme degree. It formed the basis of almost all subsequent civil legal systems in the West. It provided a scalable, transferable framework for justice across radically different cultures within the empire.
And underpinning that law was their really innovative concept of citizenship. That feels key.
Yes, you're right. That's critical. Initially, Roman citizenship was exclusive, right? A point of pride in the original city-state.
But then they expanded it.
As the empire expanded, Rome strategically granted citizenship to conquered peoples. It was brilliant, really, turning potential enemies into stakeholders.
So it wasn't just a cultural thing.
No, it was a political and legal instrument. It bound vast regions to the central power, making it easier to govern, easier to tax, a tool of integration.
And culturally, I mean, their influence is still everywhere. Latin forming the base of Romance languages, their literature, mythology. It permeated Western thought for centuries.
Absolutely pervasive. Rome's contribution was really the framework, the legal structure, the concept of citizenship, and the physical infrastructure needed to manage a truly world-spanning civilization.
So when we put these three achievements side by side, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Rome, we see this incredible evolutionary journey in human organization.
A clear progression.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, our sources make it really clear that each civilization was a vital step. You couldn't really skip one.
No, they built on each other, consciously or not. We can kind of summarize their unique legacies, their foundational contributions. Mesopotamia pioneered the necessary tools of order writing, codified law.
The basics.
The absolute basics. Then Egypt established the organizational model, that blueprint for a stable, centralized state bureaucracy, often managed through divine authority.
The structure.
The structure, yes. And finally, Rome perfected the system, the scalable legal framework, the integration through citizenship, and that utilitarian engineering needed to manage a true, massive empire.
The scaling mechanism. Tools, model, system.
That's a good way to put it.
So what does this all mean for you listening? It means that every time a modern nation drafts a constitution,
That's Rome.
or decides on infrastructure spending,
Also Rome.
or formalizes a business contract,
Mesopotamia.
or even just centralizes authority in a capital city,
Echoes of Egypt, perhaps.
they are following templates laid down thousands of years ago. These three civilizations didn't just fade away. They are like the structural skeleton of humanity's journey to the modern world we live in.
They're deeply embedded.
We've traced this evolution, statehood, law, engineering from the first cuneiform tablet to the last Roman aqueduct.
Yeah.
But here's the final thought we want to leave you with. Considering these three massive interwoven contributions, Mesopotamia's written legal code, Egypt's centralized state system, or Rome's concept of sort of universal citizenship, which of these ancient innovations do you believe has had the single largest, though maybe the most invisible, impact on the structure of your life today?
Which one is the quiet engine?
Yeah. Which one is the quiet engine of modern society? Something to think about.
Definitely something to ponder. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the true origins of civilization.
See you next time.